Talk Radio.
Michiamo apura kanu apurai kaitnu ineye AKANFO NANASOM da medinde Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan. Akwamuman Amaruka Atifi Odwirafo. That means greeting to all Apurakani people, meaning Africans, Black people. Today is AKANFO NANASOM Day, Ancient Authentic Akhan Ancestral Religion Day. My name is Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan, Odwirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America. Yet I say we appreciate you tuning in once again to the show. We're going to put in some links in the chat room right now for individuals who are new to the program. We have 3 broadcasts on a weekly basis. We have AKANFO NANASOM, Ancient Authentic Akhan Ancestral Religion on Joda on Mondays. On Tuesdays we have Ojira, which means purification. We deal with Apurakani Ancestral Religion, Nanasom in general, as opposed to, of course, on Monday nights we deal specifically with the Akhan expression, but on Finada Tuesday nights for Ojira we deal with Nanasom, Apurakani Ancestral Religion in general, and how ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives, thoughts, intentions, and actions, moment to moment, day to day, month to month, year to year, and so forth, and how we bring clarity to principles, concepts, approaches to culture, ritual practice, and so forth. We also have on Abukuda or Akuada Wednesday nights, we have our Egua Marketplace show, and on that show we bring Apurakani businesses, organizations, and institutions. We have individuals come on and talk about their service to the community and how their ancestral religious practice and philosophy informs their approach to serving the Apurakani community in a positive capacity. In the context of that Egua Marketplace piece, we have published the Okom Economic Development Model. When you go to our Okom Economic Development page, we'll place the link in the chat room right now. You see that we've published the model, the Okom Economic Development Model. We deal with economic development, short, mid, and long term from an Apurakani or African. We deal with our collective identity as Apurakani people, our function in creation as Apurakani people individually and collectively. And once we're grounded in that, then we are naturally inclined. We don't have to be taught, but we're naturally inclined, rooted in divine order, that natural inclination, natural propensity, that innate drive towards supporting one another, just like the cells in the body support and function in harmony with one another naturally. We're naturally inclined, once we embrace our identity consciously, to engage in cooperative economics. So at that point, all we need is an effective strategy. Our strategy in the Okom Economic Development Model is to starve the beast and feed the pride. So therefore, we make an assessment on a weekly basis to determine what funds we would have wasted at white businesses, wasted with the whites and their offspring, and we starve the beast, reallocate those funds, and feed the pride, feed the business, organization, institution of the week. We are targeting one Apurakani business, organization, or institution per week for 15 weeks. And we are in week number 18. So when you look on the Okom Economic Development page, you'll see the Okom Economic Development Model. You can download that model. It's a free download, of course. You can also download the 4-part series that we did on the Okom Economic Development Model on our Blog Talk Radio show, where we dissect the model and show its applications to every aspect of our lives and to the 7 principal values of Ama-Infesio, or nation building, restoration. We also have the video of our broadcast, Egua Kodi, which is economic warfare. So we talk about that in the context of the reality that just as our ancestresses and ancestors who were forced into enslavement in the Western Hemisphere. Once they arrived on these shores, they recognized that every time they communicated with one another, every time they had some form of exchange, whether it was ideas or materials or what have you, they understood those communications and those exchanges took place behind enemy lines. And as they were exchanging information and exchanging materials and so forth, they were always doing so in the context of utilizing these exchanges so that they can move towards liberation, freeing themselves from the plantation, killing the whites and their offspring, and establishing their own independent, sovereign nation. And of course, those of our people who maintain their ancestral religious practices did so to great effect. They established not only Haiti, the Republic of Haiti and so forth, and in Haiti, independent republic, the Maroons in Jamaica, the Maroons in Suriname, but you also have, of course, the AKANFO, as well as other Aakhuamuman people in North America who freed ourselves from enslavement, waged war against the whites and their offspring, defended ourselves, and established independent communities right here in America. Okay, so we deal with that on that economic warfare. We show in the same fashion that we are dealing with the same set of circumstances. We are still behind enemy lines because we are not yet sovereign, independent, and so forth. Until we attain that position, we are operating behind enemy lines. So every time we spend any money, every time we utilize resources, they should be utilized in the context of being a strike against the enemy, the whites and their offspring. So this is what we deal with. And then we also have the broadcast, Nkwaseapanyinfo, Nehem, self-employment, and ancestral culture. We talk about self-employment. First, we're talking about it in the context of your krawa, your soul, your divine consciousness, which is the divinity that dwells in the head region of Afro-Akani people. It is that force in your head region called Kra and Krawa in Akan, Ka and Kaeda Nation Kemet. The soul, the divine consciousness, a divinity that pulls you in the head region towards thoughts, intentions, and actions that are in harmony with divine order. So encoded within that force is the function you are to execute, as well as the spiritual capacity, the energy you have, the power you have to execute that function. So when you employ your naturally allotted function and energy that you've been given by the Supreme Being to execute your function in creation, then you're engaged in self-employment. Self meaning the divinity, the consciousness, the soul, the divine consciousness, guiding your thoughts, intentions, and actions. That is self-employment, employing your capacities, your spiritual energy towards fulfilling your role in creation. And that extends from internal to external. So then we start to deal with self-employment with regard to economic activity. So all of those broadcasts you'll find on the page, as well as the Akwamu Economic Development Model, and you'll find a list of businesses that we've been targeting. That list is ever growing, and you'll see the links to their direct websites, as well as the links to the broadcast that they sat with us and did with us for 2 hours, talking about their businesses, organizations, and institutions, and so forth. So we're in week number 17, and we'll be posting the business of the week later tonight. All right. So we have a couple of links we posted in the chat room. The Nananom link we're going to go over. We're also going to post, if you look, post the direct link to the publications page. We're going to go over the information in the MASIE. So we'll put that in there right now. And the book itself is MASIE. So when you go to the Sunhoma page, the publications page, you scroll down and you'll see the book, MASIE. Click on that link, and it'll take you directly to the MASIE page. So what we're dealing with on AKANFO NANASOM is ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion. So the reason we deal with the Akan expression on Joda on Monday night, number one, we are Akan, so that is our ancestral spirit, genetic identity. So we want to deal with the Akan expression, but anytime you study any Aakhuamuman ancestral religious expression, it informs all other expressions, because fundamentally, all Aakhuamuman people, wherever we are in the world, we attune ourselves to the Supreme Being, the Great Mother and Great Father, through the agency of the deities and the ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated. So that same structure you find across the board. The only differences being language and specific cultural expressions, but the fundamental undergirding structure is the same sound structure. So we deal with the Akan expression because, number one, we're Akan. Number two, because of the misinformation that is propagated in the Western Hemisphere by people who purport to practice the Akan tradition wittingly or unwittingly, and then also information coming from individuals on the continent, from Ghana as well as Ivory Coast and other places, misinforming our people about Akan culture, Akan religion, Akan philosophy, Akan cosmology, and so forth. So we have a direct link, of course, to our ancestresses and ancestors. Akan people began in ancient Kana, which is a title of ancient Nubia. Kan meaning first or foremost. Kan also means to count, to calculate, to reckon. It means that in tree language that makes up the definition of the name Akan, first or foremost, a component part of the first people in the world. Calculate, to reckon, to count, a component part of the first people to begin to engage in calculation, study, measurement, the foundation of civilization. Kan meaning to count, to calculate, to reckon, and Kan meaning first and foremost. In the tree language of the Akan people, you'll find that in ancient Kanat and Kemet, Kan also means first and foremost. It also means to calculate, to reckon, because it's the same term. Our language is directly derivative of our ancient language. So you'll find that the ancient land of so-called Nubia had different titles, including Knesset, including Paseti in certain areas, also including Kanat, or the Kanit land, the first land, the foremost land, the land of the south. So, and the people called the Kanat people Kanatu and Kanitu, and this is why today Akan people are called Akani. That's one Akan person. AKANFO, the group of people, folk who are Akan. Just as we would call Akani today, we call it the Kanit people and the land itself. We migrated west after the fall of ancient Kemet, and portions of Kanat reestablished the Akana Empire, the ancient empire of Akana or Ghana, about 2,000 years ago, and some of our people about 1,000 years later migrated to the forest belt, savanna regions in today's Côte d'Ivoire and Ivory Coast to reestablish Akana or Akan civilization in those regions again. A few hundred years later, some of our people were forcibly taken from that region and forced into the Western Hemisphere during the Musuo Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. And this is how our people ended up in North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe. So this is a direct link from ancient Kanat in East Africa to West Africa to Africa, to the Western Hemisphere. And of course, for those who are unaware, we have published our book, Africa, the origin of the term Africa, proving conclusively and for the first time that the term Africa comes directly from Africa, which we show in the Medu, in the hieroglyphs of ancient Kemet, in the language, the term itself, as well as the cosmology that gave birth to the term. Afrika, the land, Kaf, Afura, the land of the creator, Afurat Kayat, the land Kayat of Afurat, the creatress. So we go into detail about that. All right. So we have a direct identity, physically, genetically, as well as spiritually. So we talk about a spirit genetic identity, transcarnational identity. We are the same ancestresses and ancestors, the Nananom Mpanyinfo and Mpanyinfo who lived once on the continent, forced into the Western Hemisphere. We made our transition. Our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, and so forth, continue to perpetuate the blood circle. And at some point, we, through Bebra, rebirth or reincarnation, we are born and drawn back into the womb of one of our descendants. Generations later, we're back in the world. We are the same Afurakani people who used to live on the continent, and we are right back in the world right now. So we have a direct, of course, genetic lineage, but a direct spirit lineage as well. So we talk about a spirit genetic lineage, blood circle, transcarnational identity, meaning the same spirit, the same Afurakani or Afuraikani spirit returning to live once again in the world through our blood circle. Because we have that, of course, we have an understanding of cosmology. We have an understanding of Abodie, of creation. We have an understanding of Iriase, of the world, because we are the same people, and we're directly connected not only to our ancient ancestors and ancestors, but also to the Abosom, the forces in nature, the spirit forces that animate the earth mother, the oceans, rivers, atmosphere, fire, thunder, lightning, the core of earth and so forth, as well as the black substance of space, the various stars, including our sun, various moons and planets, and so forth. The spiritual forces that animate these aspects of creation are the forces in nature. And Akhan calls Abosom, deities, goddesses and gods, conscious, functioning, reasoning entities that animate these physical bodies in creation, just like your spirit, you are a conscious, functioning, reasoning entity that animates the physical body. And we are children of the Abosom as Afurakani people and Afurakani people only. Because we have a direct connection with them, we are cells within the great divine body of the Supreme Being, Nyame wa Nyame or Aminet Amin, or the Great Mother and Great Father. They are comprised of the Supreme Being as two halves of the divine whole. The organs within their great divine body are the deities, the forces in nature, and the cells within those organs are plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakani, human life. So we are the cells. Our parent organs are the divinity, and our great parents are Nyame wa Nyame, or Aminet, Amen, the Great Mother, Great Father, the Supreme Being. So therefore, we are directly connected to the organs. We're children of the organs. We have these organs governing our spiritual head. So we have a direct connection to the forces in nature, a direct connection to, of course, our ancestresses and ancestors. So therefore, we have a direct knowledge of the culture. Just like we've talked about as far as the structure of creation, if you look at the great divine body of the Supreme Being, the black substance of space is the quote-unquote melanin within the body of the Supreme Being. Just like you have melanin, the chemical that gives us our color, but it's also in all of our major organs and body systems. All of our organs and systems are therefore floating, quote-unquote, in a black substance. Well, the sun, moons, planets, stars, and so forth are all floating in the black substance called Ka and Kayet in ancient Kemet, so-called dark energy or dark matter, which makes up over 99+% of the universe, that black plasma, that substance, melanin, quote-unquote, within the great divine body of the Supreme Being that contains all. We have that in our bodies as well. And in the same fashion, you also have water that is throughout your body, throughout your cells and everything else. The water system within the body is like the ancestral realm within the body. And when a cell dies, the water leaves the cell, reconnects with the water within the organ or organ system. When cells are reborn, they are replenished by the water, rejuvenated by the water, cleansed by the water, as the water enters into the constitution of that newly formed cell. That's like reincarnation. So the water system in the body is like the ancestral realm. So we're directly, just like your cells are directly connected to the water in the body, we are connected to the ancestral realm as well. It's a hierarchical relationship. Cells, organs, the great divine body, saturated by the black substance of space, saturated by the water within the body. And we are children of the organs, the divinities, and we are connected to the great Khan, Kayet, the divine consciousness and melanin intelligence of the Supreme Being, but we're also connected to the water system and surrounded and cleansed and rejuvenated by it constantly. So there's no separation of us from the ancestral realm, just like there's no separation of the cells from the water within the body. Some cells become cancerous, however. They become disfigured, no longer operating like the other cells, and seek to consume and destroy the other cells. And once they become disfigured and begin to malfunction, then they are separated, isolated, and slated for destruction by the immune system and lymphatic system. And of course, these cancerous cells are those individuals and entities that become corrupt within the great body of the Afurakani community, the world body community. Of course, these cancerous cells within the great black body are the whites and their offspring. White Europeans, Americans, Asians, Hindus, Arabs, pseudo-Native Americans, pseudo so-called white Hispanics, white Latinos, and so forth, all non-Afurakani, non-Afurakani individuals are spirits of disorder. They incarnate as spirits of disorder, cancerous cells within the great body of humanity that are slated for destruction, not repair. They're beyond repair because they have no krawa, no soul, no divine consciousness, no divinity dwelling in the head region. So we need to understand that structure because we're getting into tonight the Nananom Mpanyinfo and the Nkwaseapanyinfo. Nananom Mpanyinfo are talking about the elders and elderesses who are spiritually cultivated, the honorable elders and elderesses, the honorable and venerable elders and elderesses within our blood circles, within our clans and so forth, within our community. But then you also have the Nkwaseapanyinfo, which means the stupid, the foolish elder, the useless elder, the ignorant elder or elderess, older person. Every person who's older is not an elder. So we need to understand reality. We need to understand definitions, proper definitions, not just going by some sloganeering that you hear people talking about. Sometimes people embrace culture and believe that they're embracing culture, and they read about culture, and they learn certain things from individuals here in the Western Hemisphere, as well as individuals on the continent of Africa who are misinformed or deliberately misinforming people. And then we come to the community with these slogans that we don't understand because we're not basing what we're talking about on direct experience of reality. We're just receiving and repeating without any discernment, without any delineation between what is true and what's false. So you hear people repeating slogans. The Africans revere their elders. The Africans in African culture, we respect our elders no matter what. We always respect our elders. No. Afurakani people, we respect wisdom. We respect divine order. And those who are reflections of divine order, reflections of wisdom, and repositories of wisdom, and those who transmit the culture without profaning the culture, because they live in harmony and they consistently demonstrate to the community on a regular basis that they're aligning their thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order, then those people are reflective of Inyamewa, Inyame in the community, and they are respected because they're reflections of order. They become the spiritually cultivated elders and elderesses, the Nananom Mpanyinfo. These are the honorable or venerable or those who are revered. But those who do not engage that kind of process to align themselves, thoughts, intentions, and actions with order, and they're controlled by lust, controlled by vice, controlled by ignorance, controlled by malice and so forth, yet they are older, they're Nkwaseapanyinfo. They're the stupid or foolish older people that we don't revere, we revile, we reject them. They're criminals. They're repulsed. You keep your children away from them. You don't honor them. You reject them. That's real culture. It's divine law and divine hate, the expansive and contractive poles of divine order. So some of our people don't understand that. So they'll believe that they're Pan-African, or believe that they're Afrocentric, or believe that they're dealing with black power and so forth, and they say, well, we respect our elders no matter what. Whatever they say, and even if your elder's saying, well, you need to go to church and worship a white, say, well, I got to respect that because that's what they want. That's nonsense. You're being a slave. Your so-called elder tells you, well, hey, you shouldn't straighten out your hair. We've always had, a salon in the family, and you shouldn't go against that. You should continue to get your hair straightened out. Well, I got to follow my elders. We don't go against our elders. It's time for you to take your ancestral name back. And then one of your elders or elderesses, mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers, chime in and say, well, you can't change your last name. That was your father's name, and that was his father's name. That goes back, and this is our lineage, and you can't change our name. I gave you that name when you were born, and that's important to us, and all this other nonsense. And you say, well, I can't go against my elders. It's not African to go against your elders. I'm just going to have to keep this English name. That's idiotic. That's nonsensical. You're embracing not Afurakani culture, we're embracing a perversion, a white perversion of ancestral culture. The whites and their offspring invading our culture, forcing Christianity on the brainwashed amongst our people, forcing Islam amongst the brainwashed of our people, forcing false ideology. And when they brainwash the older individuals in the population, and then they teach, obey your mother and father, quote unquote, in the Bible, honor your mother and father and so forth. Of course, we didn't learn to honor our mothers and fathers from that cartoonish account in the Bible. But when they're brainwashed with that nonsense, with that fake religion, with their fictional cartoon characters who never existed, Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, all of these characters in the Bible, Quran, Talmud, and so forth, Buddha as well, and Brahman, fictional cartoon characters. When we're brainwashed with that pseudo-philosophy, the older people, then they teach it to the younger people. And they teach, and heavily teach, do not disrespect, quote-unquote, your elders. But they were being taught by the whites and their offspring, in reality, don't disrespect Christianity. Don't disrespect coming out of the mouths of your elders if it's Christianity, if it's going against your culture. So when the so-called elders teach you to do one thing or do another thing and it goes against your ancestral culture, but they're brainwashed and they're teaching you foolishness, then you feel like you're going against the elders by rejecting what they have to say and identifying it as pure stupidity. You're foolishly believing you're going against the elders, so you end up embracing nonsense and holding on to nonsense and suppressing your natural urge and ancestral mandate to embrace Nkwade, to embrace truth, because you've been brainwashed by brainwashed elders and elders. So some of our people who believe that they have been embracing Pan-Africanism, Afrocentrism, Black power, and so forth, they're sloganeering misinformation. So we're correcting that record. So if we're going to correct the record, let's look at definition. If this notion of, well, the Africans respect their elders, then why would there be a term in the Akan language and other languages for a stupid elder? Nkwaseapanyinfo means stupid or foolish and idiot in the Akan language. Nkwaseapanyinfo means a stupid or foolish elder. If we didn't have this notion of stupid or foolish elders, it wouldn't be in the language. It wouldn't be part and parcel of the language, and everybody knows that. So it's only the brainwashed here, who've been brainwashed by the whites and their offspring, who believe that that doesn't exist and are shocked that such terminology exists when it's commonplace and has always been commonplace. Even going back to ancient Kemet, talking about not spending time around people who are criminal and ignorant and so forth, whether they're older or younger. You'll find these maxims, such as in maxims of Ptah, dealing with the same kind of information. So, Kwasea means stupid or foolish. Panyin means an older person. Pa means right. It means mature, but it also means old or older. Yin means to expand, to grow. It also means old or older. So Panyin means an older individual, older entity, and so forth. So that's the root of the term. Pa can also mean good, but at root, Pa means older. Now, when you have the term, we talked about Nananom, that's plural for Nana in the Akan language. So let's look at the term Nana. And you look in the MASIE, our book, MASIE, the Ancestorhood of Nana Yao. Dr. Bobby E. Wright wrote this book a number of years ago. In this particular book, and we're going to go through some of the information here as it relates to the difference between the Nananom Mpanyinfo and the Nkwaseapanyinfo. In this book, go to page 3, MASIE. You go to the publications page, link on the website. We put it in the chat room. You can download this, the free ebook versions of the book. We talk about the definition of the title Nana in the Akan language. So what we say is Nana is a term used in Akan culture describing the highest office attainable in society by an individual, often translated as elder or elderess. The term embodies much more. A Nana in Akan culture is one who has mastered life, one who has recognized, embraced, and executes the divine functions they were given by the Supreme Being to execute in the world. A Nana is one who participates in the ritual incorporation of divine law. and the ritual restoration of divine balance, the essence of Afro-Akani ancestral religion, or Nanasom. The qualities of wisdom and intelligence, those qualities which enable one to understand what to accept and what to reject, what to love and what to hate, the difference between order and disorder, and how to function in life accordingly, are embodied by the Nana in Akan culture. The Nana is one who harmoniously negotiates the needs of the individual with the needs of the group in society. This is executed with a keen eye on the development and preservation of the whole, rooted in an in-depth understanding of the function, destiny of the individual and the function of the clan as they relate to our place in creation. The Nana naturally becomes an example for others to emulate. Nana is a title given to individuals, male or female, who embody these principles. Yet the title is first and foremost part of the title of the Supreme Being. Nyame, God, Amen, is often called Nana Nyame, and Nyamewa, the great goddess, also called Amenet, is often called Nana Nyamewa. The Akan, as well as all Afro-Akani African cultures, have a proper understanding of the nature of the Supreme Being, consisting of the Great Father and the Great Mother, functioning together as one divine unit. In Akan culture, the various Abosom, deities, divine forces of nature, children of the Supreme Being, also carry the title Nana. The same is true of the honored ancestresses and ancestors, or Nananom Mpanyinfo, those who sit at the feet, quote-unquote, of the Great Mother and the Great Father in the spirit world now, because they lived in harmony with the Great Mother and the Great Father while they lived on earth. They are therefore endowed by Nyamewa, Nyame, the Supreme Being, with the power to assist and guide their descendants on earth in the present as we sometimes lose our way. The title Nana carries great weight, even divine quality. Thus, only those who have demonstrated their worthiness of the title are properly addressed as such. Fundamentally, they have become part of a divine community after having attained a certain level of spiritual cultivation. So that is a definition that we publish regarding the nature of Nana, a gender-neutral term for, in general, grandmother and grandfather, but the actual title dealing with those who have embraced and execute their divine function, aligning their thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order consistently, day in and day out, year in and year out, becoming a model to emulate within society, a model for all Afro-Akani people to aspire to. They have crystallized into their divine function, and they radiate that energy on a regular basis. So let's go to the Nanasom page right now. And on the website, Odwirafo.com, nanasom.html, Nanasom, nanasom.html. Nanasom, of course, is our term for Afro-Akani ancestral religion. But what we do on this page is a couple of things we want to show the term Nana as well. We talked about the tree term, Nana. And then we also talk about the term Som, meaning to serve. So Nanasom means to serve. Som, Nana, whether that's Nana Nyame, the Great Father, Nana Nyamewa, the Great Mother, the Nananom, Abosom, Nyina, all of the Abosom, the Nananom Mpanyinfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. But we also give a breakdown of the origin of the term Nana. Na means ancestor, ancestry, and so forth in the Akan language. It's duplicated or reduplicated, becoming Nana, meaning older ones, ancient ones, elder ones, elderess ones, relating to ancestry, but also relating to that level of development. Now, the term Nana, as we say, is a reduplication of the root Na. In the tree language, the root Na is defined as that which is rare, precious, ancient, ancestry, great. The tree language is derived of our ancestral language of ancient Kani, Nubia, and Kemet, so-called Egypt. We therefore find that in the Medusa, in the hieroglyph, the term Na means great, greatness, benevolent. The related term Nanu means good or beautiful, while another version Nanu means grains or seed. So we showed the Medutu for that. The reason why Na means rare, precious, ancient, and great in the tree language and is reduplicated as Nana, identifying those who have achieved that level, that societal office, that highest societal office of Nana. The reason why Na has that root of greatness and rare and precious and ancient is because the term Na in ancient Kemet means great and greatness. And Nanu, of course, means good and beautiful. So we showed the Medutu there. Nanu also means grain, seeds, and so forth. So, and here we're talking about when we're talking about Nanasom, so we also show on this page as well that just like Som means to serve in the language, in the tree language, Som in ancient Kemet means to pile offerings on an altar dealing with ritual invocation, same term. So we say thus in our ancient ancestral language, these terms also describe an undertaking, custom, or practice, Som, of ritual invocation, Som, and ritual offering or service, Som, to they who are good, beautiful, great, or Nana. On Nananom Mpanyinfo, the seed people, and of course Nanu means seed or grain, the Abosom, the seed forces of creation, and Nana Nyamewa, and Nana Nyame, who are Amenet and Amen, they who seeded Nanu all. These are the ancient conceptual and phonetic roots of the term and nature of Nanasom, for Kanit and Kemet are the roots of Afurakani, Afurakani, or African ancestral religious inheritance. Now, we go from ancient Kanit and Kemet, dealing with Na, and Nana meaning great, greatness, beautiful, those who seeded all and so forth, to the Akan language, Nana being a general term for grandmother and grandfather with regard to the child, because when the child is born and is growing and developing, the mother and father are good people, but the grandmother and grandfather are quote-unquote Na, or great. They're the great ones. And then you have great-grandfathers and great-great-grandmothers and so forth. So in respect to the child, grandparents are the elder and elderess. They're like the supreme being with regard to the relationship to the child. So they are Nana to that child. Of course, Nana is gender neutral, but it's used as a term for Nyamewa, Nyame, as a Mrane, a praise name. So we can say Nyame, we can say Nana, Nyame, or Nyamewa, Nana, Nyamewa, the ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated, honorable, venerable, are Nananom, which is plural for Nana, Nananom Mpanyinfo, the Mpanyinfo, the ancestresses and ancestors who had achieved that societal office of Nana when they were on earth, and they had achieved that office becoming Nananom Mpanyinfo, honorable elders and elderesses, and when they made their transition, they became Nananom Mpanyinfo. They moved into that same position, that societal position in the spirit realm, because they attained it while they were here in the world. So again, Nana meaning venerable, elder, elders. Ancient Kanit and Kemet, then to the Akan tradition. Of course, when we get to America, we still use that term, some of our people. So people will call their grandparents, grandmother, they'll call her Nana or Nana. And the reason why they say Nana or Nana is not because it's coming from the British. It's coming directly from the Akan people. You'll find that some terms that the whites and their offspring use, like the British and others, you'll find these in the languages of our people. Sometimes recent influences over the past 500 plus years, but the roots, of course, go back thousands of years, because the roots of the Proto-Indo-European language phylum going back thousands of years can be found in the language of ancient Kemet that goes back thousands of years before the origin of the Proto-Indo-European so-called language file. So you'll find that Nana or Nana being grandmother, elder, elders, and so forth, comes directly from Nana in the Akan tradition. We're going further back, ancient Kemet. Of course, when we went, some of our people migrated from ancient Kemet, from Kanat, Nubia, through ancient Kemet, settling Kemet, and then further going up into Kanana, so-called Canaan, and the Akara or Akana Empire, so-called Babylon and so forth. But prior to the whites and their offspring invading, with our people bringing the same culture from ancient Kanat and Kemet into Kanana, so-called Canaan, into Sumer and Elam and so forth. Of course, we established the 7-day week. And of course, you'll find the name of the great moon divinity is Nana, and you'll also find Inanna there as well. That comes directly from our ancient language. So you'll find it in ancient Kemet, in the so-called Near East prior to the whites and their offspring, in West Africa, and on into America. We have never stopped using these terms. Of course, our Akan people who were forced into North America, we continue to use these terms to refer to our people with the same definition, with the same level of an honorific title. So that's the origin of that. So you have Nana, singular, Nananom, plural. Opanyi, meaning an older individual. Pa, meaning old, right, mature. Panyin, also meaning old and older and so forth. So you have this concept of an opanyi, which is an older person. It's just like the English word older. But then when you have an elder, an elderess with a different connotation, having to do with someone who is revered or honorable and so forth, then they will be called nana, or fully a nana panyin. The kind of panyin, the kind of older person who is nana. And then plural is Nananom Mpanyinfo. And again, of course, those are the people who align their thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. So, why do they become a symbol for symbol to be emulated? How do they become those who are to be emulated? What is the difference between a Nana Panyin, or the Nananom Mpanyinfo, and the average Opanyin, and then, of course, the stupid or foolish elder or elder? The fundamental difference is the Nana Panyin recognizes and embraces the Kra, or the Krawa, the soul, the divine consciousness. We are born with a Kra, a soul, a divine consciousness, and this is Aakhuamuman people only, a deity that is assigned to us to dwell with us throughout the course of our lives, installs itself in the head region of our sunsum, our spirit, pre-incarnation. Before we incarnate into a womb, as we've talked about before, our sunsum, our spirit, is drawn to Inyame wa Inyame, Amenet Amen. They assign us a Kra, or a Krawa, a soul, a divine consciousness, a divinity, to go and dwell and install itself in our head region. That force, a male force if you're male, a female force if you're female, dwelling with you throughout the course of your life. Once that divinity is attached, installed in the head region of your spirit body, then you are sent back to the ancestral realm to await reincarnation. And you are ushered into a blood circle, ushered into a womb by your Nsamanfo. And then your spirit takes up residence in the union of the sperm and ovum, which is the zygote, and you begin to develop, and 40 weeks later, you're born into the world. So you come into the world with a Kra, soul of divine consciousness, encoded within that force in your head region. That pull that you feel in your head region, of course, is your specific function that you are to execute in creation. The male and female aspects of that function is the Nkra and Nkrapia. Then you're also given a specific configuration of energy so that you can execute that function. And the male and female aspect of that energy complex is the She and Shebia, and your capacity to wield that energy. So just as we show in our book, the Okra complex, the soul of AKANFO, and we detail this information so you can study that book dealing with the nature of the soul. We show the fourfold division of the brain, the right and left hemispheres of the cerebral cortex, the right and left hemispheres of the cerebellum, and they are akin to the Nkra and Nkrabia, the divine function, and the She and Shebia, the energy you've been given to execute that function. So all of that is encoded within your spirit brain, your Kra, your Krawa. It's a divinity that dwells with you, leads you towards thoughts, intentions, and actions that are in harmony and reflective of divine order. Spirituality is about aligning ourselves consistently with that pull, executing our function in the world. And as we said earlier, we are cells within the great divine body, so it is our function to harmonize all actions with the organ of which we are a component part. And when the cells of your heart support heart functions, they are supporting the whole body at the same time. When the bone marrow cells support the skeletal functions, they're supporting the whole body at the same time. When we as children of specific abosome execute our function in creation in harmony with the energy of that abosome that's been dispensed to us, whether it's a fiery abosome and we're wielding fiery energy to execute our function in creation, or watery abosome and we're using that cool, watery, magnetic energy to execute our function in creation in harmony with our design, with our nature, then we're aligning our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. When we make mistakes, then we have Nananom Mpanyinfo, ancestral religion, the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. So we engage in ritual practices to realign our thoughts, intentions, and actions with law, to incorporate law, and to restore balance through ritual to our thoughts, intentions, and actions when imbalance has occurred, so we can get back in harmony with order so we can continue to move forward. So when people engage that process and they execute their function in creation and are adept with executing the ritual practices of Nanasom to make sure they're always in alignment with order, and they begin to live that way on a consistent basis, year after year after year, they grow into that function or office of Nana. They crystallize into that function or office. And now, as we talked about in the previous broadcast, they are manifesting Subain Pa. They're manifesting a character, Subain, which is Pa, which is good, but also sacred. They're manifesting sacred character, divine character. They're consistently living in harmony with divine order and are expression of divine order. This is what a Nana Panyin is, the Nananom Mpanyinfo. But then you have the Nkwaseapanyinfo who are pulled by lust, misguided desire, controlled by malice, perverse evil intent to corrupt and destroy. So they're not embracing law and hate, the expansive pole of order and the contractive pole of order. They're not incorporating things that will allow them to align themselves and balance themselves, and they're not rejecting disorder through divine hate. They're rejecting order, and they're incorporating perversity. So they're embracing lust and malice, the perversions of law and hate. So then they manifest as pasea, stupid or ignorant, discordant, spiritually disaligned, self-destructive. And those are the individuals we keep our children away from. So let's go through some specifics with regard to how that manifests with regard to ethical existence. Going back to the MASIE, this publication has 7 sections. We took 7 adinkra symbols in the Akan tradition, which are sacred symbols, geometric forms, and so forth, patterns. These sacred symbols have different connotations. They have different or proverbs associated with them, divine ancestral wisdom teachings associated with them. So when we utilize these symbols, they have their own name, which is rooted in the proverbial wisdom that they're associated with. And every time you see the symbol, it affects your consciousness in a fashion that you recall the specific proverb or ebe that's associated with the symbol, but you're also affected spiritually by the structure of the symbol. Geometric patterns, geometric forms have a direct effect upon our spirit body. Just by virtue of the fact that when you stare at and look at a symbol and you project your life force energy to move through space and apprehend that symbol, and the life force energy moves through that geometric symbol and whatever shape that geometric symbol is in, your life force energy has to move through that shape and generate an electromagnetic field rooted in that shape. And that specific configuration, that geometric pattern, whether it's circular or square or triangular or some combination thereof, that specific pattern affects your energetic body in a measurable fashion. So when we utilize these adinkra symbols, they become magnets for the abosome, magnets for the Nananom Mpanyinfo. They stimulate different aspects of our spirit body, our spiritual organs, and so forth. So when we look at a symbol, apprehend a symbol, it affects us energetically, but also cognitively and spiritually because of the ebe, the divine wisdom teaching associated with the symbol as well, and the name of the symbol as well. And when we recall the name of the symbol, it's not a notion of some of our words of power, like in the pseudo tradition of Hinduism and so forth. Some of them are mantras, some of them are sacred. All of the words in Afurakani, Afuraikaidik ancestral languages have mantric value. So every time we speak the language, every time we say the names, whether it's the names of our people, our ancestral names, or the names of symbols, the sound vibrations, that specific configuration of sound vibrations associated with such a symbol, those sound vibrations alone stimulate and motivate and animate our spirits in specific fashion. The geometric form itself, its specific form radiating a specific configuration of energy rooted in its unique form. That radiation of energy affects our spirit bodies in a harmonious fashion as well. That's why symbols are sacred. We're not just talking about arbitrary symbols like the whites and offspring use for products, because they use those to brainwash our people as well. We use symbols that actually have meaning, that actually have power, that inform us in a harmonious fashion. If you look at the so-called swoosh symbol of quote-unquote Nike, if you just simply drew that symbol and showed it to a child or an adult, they will instantaneously say Nike. If you drew the symbol of a perpendicular line and a horizontal line in the form of a so-called cross and showed that symbol and asked people, what are these two lines? They would say, that represents God. If you have an instantaneous response that was pre-programmed into you and you instantaneously respond, that means you have been programmed. If you see a curved line when someone shows it to you, if you don't say, well, that's the curved line, if you say, oh, that's Nike, that means you've been programmed, because nothing about a curved line suggests the word Nike until somebody attached that word to a curved line, and now you've been brainwashed and programmed to respond just like a machine. Nothing inherent within a perpendicular line and a horizontal line means a deity or a religion. They're just two lines. Because you see those lines and you've been programmed with that nonsense, you say, Jesus, God, it's nonsense, fictional cartoon character. So we're programmed with symbols. You see a circle with a dot in the middle, and it's a red circle with a red dot in the middle. Automatically people say, well, that's Target. They're thinking about the retail outlet. And of course, if you practice ancestral religion, you know the circle with the dot in the middle represents Ra and Wright and the sun and stars and so forth as well. And that'll be the automatic response that you'll see because you understand that. But once again, symbols are being used in a negative way to program our people on a daily basis. And we respond to foolish programming. We have always used symbols that have real meaning based on their actual form and the vibrations that emanate from them and how they affect our spirit organs, our spirit bodies and so forth, and the names that they actually generate themselves that we replicate when we speak their name and the ancestral wisdom associated with them. We use these symbols to positively program our spirit. That's why you see people using Adinkra symbols or the Medusa, the hieroglyphs and so forth, painted on walls and clothes and tattoos and everything else to constantly remind us of different aspects of divine order. So we took 7 of these Adinkra symbols that represent and reference Odwirafo, our ethical existence. We show the proverbs, the Ebe associated with them, and we talk about what they represent and how they are connected to us spiritually. These 7 Adinkra symbols are aligned with the Abosom, the forces in nature that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern this 7-day Akan week, but also govern all natural cycles on Earth, including the chronobiological cycle of Afuraikani people. So each one of these 7 symbols are connected to the energy of the Abosom of that day or that solar, lunar, or planetary body, which therefore makes it a holistic set of 7 symbols because the various Abosom give their input into what constitutes ethical existence. So this is what we're dealing with. So we talk about these symbols and then we'll show the difference between the Nananom and the Nkwaseapanyinfo with regard to ethical existence so you can know the difference. So you can understand the difference of when you're growing into and crystallizing as Nana, and even before you get to that point, who in your family, in your blood circle, who in your community are really Nana Panyi, who are worthy of receiving some direction, some guidance from, and who are the Nkwaseapanyinfo, the foolish, the stupid older individuals who will give you information, give you direction and guidance that is self-destructive, that is ignorant, that is discordant, that you want to stay away from, who manifests Odwirafo, ethical existence in a harmonious fashion, as Subaim Pa, sacred character, and who manifests Subaim Bon, or evil character, discordant, disordered character, and so forth. And that's key, because some of our people, we go along with individuals who claim to be elders and elders, claim all kinds of credentials. Sometimes they'll claim credentials from the White Nile Spring, which is pure stupidity. No degree from the White Nile Spring means absolutely anything. They mean absolutely nothing. That has nothing to do with any eldership at all. Anything you receive from the White Nile Spring has no bearing on your spirituality, has no bearing on have you ascended to and crystallized into the function of Nana, meaning you've aligned your thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order, because you've aligned them with the deity that governs your crop. No little silly degree, PhD or any other, has anything to do with that. No amount of studying with other individuals and getting little certifications, that means nothing. As the person aligned with the divinity, the forces in nature, and the Nananom Mpanyinfo. If they've done that, then they have a quote-unquote credential. If they have not done that, then they have nothing. And any title they've given themselves, even if it's a quote-unquote African or Kemetic or any other kind of title, it means nothing. It's what they're actually doing and the construction of their spirit that determines whether or not they've actually crystallized into that function. Not what they say, not any initiation. That doesn't mean anything either. That means absolutely nothing. There are many people who have been quote-unquote initiated into different priests and priestesses and are absolute criminals, liars, perverts, thieves, dissexual, homosexual, pervert, and the deities don't deal with them at all. So no so-called credential means anything. What is the person actually manifesting on a daily basis, moment to moment to moment? And it's your own kra, your soul, your divine consciousness, in alignment with you, connecting with them. Are your Nananom Mpanyinfo, your spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, pushing you to align yourself with their guidance or not? Because if your people are not, then you reject these fools outright, no matter what they say. That's real culture. So we're not dependent on anybody in this hemisphere or on the continent to direct us and tell us what we need to be doing. We get our direction directly from our Nananom Mpanyinfo. And if they direct us to connect with some people here in this hemisphere or on the continent, then we do so. But if they do not, then we do not. So we're in absolute control of our own spiritual cultivation. So the first principle, Shewo and She, Adinkra symbol, She means to burn, Wo means you, and She means not burn. They try to burn you, but you do not burn. Now, in the book we're talking about that, of course, that deals with indestructibility. The nature of the spirit, the sum of Afurakaini people is indestructible. No matter what has been done to us, we can overcome any obstacle that's placed before us. When you have a function to execute in creation, given to you by the Supreme Being, you must understand at the same time that you have an indestructible or unburnable nature. You're not given a function to execute by the Supreme Being throughout the course of your life, only to come in face to face with adversity and then you fall apart and can't execute your function. You would be given a function and a specific configuration of energy to execute that function without also be given an immune system so that you can repel disorder, so that you can continue your life and continue to execute your function no matter what obstacles are placed before you. So that's inherent within our nature, that capacity to overcome obstacles. That is written into our nature, and that is written into our character, and therefore we manifest that. We don't have to be taught that in the Western Hemisphere. We are a living example of that. Just by virtue of the fact that we're alive right now. Some of our people didn't make it. Some of our people were murdered before they had a chance to have children. Those who suffered on boats, suffered in chains, suffered on plantations and torture and so forth, but rose up, waged war against the whites and offspring and massacred them, and established independent nations and forced the end of enslavement and made that false, corrupt institution crumble and forced the whites and offspring to accept abolition and emancipation. Those who embraced ancestral religion are the ones who forced the end of enslavement, because we continue to wage war against the whites and their offspring. We're descendants of those individuals. The fact that we're walking around right now, we're descendants of the ones who survived. The ones who didn't survive didn't have children. So there are many empty spaces around you where there would have been black people standing, because the people who didn't survive before they had a chance to have children, of course they didn't have children, so these people don't exist in the present at the numbers that they should have. But we're direct descendants, obviously, of the ones who survived. So She, War, and She, they try to burn you, but you do not burn. We are living proof of that. So we understand that. So when we see that symbol, and we learn its name, and we learn about its, ancestral wisdom, we can verify that. We can account for that. We can vouch for that, because that's who we are in the Western Hemisphere. And of course, people on the continent some of those individuals have done the same thing, account for that as well, and recognize that as well. So this is reality. The Nananom Mpanyinfo will direct us and show us that we are unburnable, indestructible. So when we adhere to our actual ancestral mandate to align our every thought, intention, and action with divine order, we are indestructible. So we don't have any fear of moving forward. But the Nkwaseapanyinfo, the weak, corrupt individual, the perverted individual, they'll try to make you believe that if you stand on principle and on divine order, then you're going to be cut down, and you should be fearful and scared of the whites and their offspring, and you shouldn't stand up and speak and act and wage war on every level against the whites and their offspring, because you may suffer, and you won't be able to overcome that obstacle. So maybe you better keep your mouth shut, go along with the enemy. That's the Nkwaseapanyinfo, the stupid elder, the foolish older individual. Those are the Negroes on the plantation who tried to keep those who were going to escape from escaping. They're standing at the fence, standing at the gate, and everybody is about to run off and leave. And these Negroes are trying to force them to believe that they shouldn't even think about escaping, and trying to convince them to change their minds and come back to the plantation and continue to be tortured and raped and so forth, and their children taken away from them on a regular basis. That's the stupid elder. And you have those stupid elders and elderesses today. And we teach the truth. Jesus never existed of any race whatsoever. Muhammad never existed of any race whatsoever. Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Moses, Aaron never existed of any race whatsoever. Buddha never existed of any race whatsoever. We prove that information in the Kuku Tuntun, the ancestral jurisdiction, and we live our lives based on that. We share that information constantly. We talk about the whites and their offspring and what's the difference between those who are fearful and those who are standing on divine order. These criminals who are gunning our people down, as we have taught continuously. The only thing that will stop police brutality is police brutality. When the police brutalize Aakhuamuman people, and the Aakhuamuman people brutalize the police. When they murder our people, the Aakhuamuman community kills the police. We are the only ones that can stop police brutality. There's no other way, and we shouldn't have any desire for it to be any other way. So when you stand on reality and divine order, the Nkwaseapanyinfo, the fool, the stupid elder, will tell you shouldn't speak in that fashion. You shouldn't teach anybody that. You shouldn't talk about the nature of the lone wolf. And the lone wolves who are connected to that Abo song, Apuwa. a bosom of war and the hunt and battle and death and justice, naturally inclined to align with that force in nature, has no fear of death, a mediator between the physical world and the ancestral realm. They're connected to the abosom that governs that kind of mediation. So they don't fear death as well. They move as that divinity whose animal totem is the lone wolf and who animates the wolves themselves. Those kind of individuals, as well as others, will be naturally inclined to follow their own cry. And as a lone wolf animated by the abosom, the divinity, Akwamu, who governs that kind of energy, who manifests as a lone wolf, they will get up and listen to their cry. And on that day, they will decide they are cutting these crackers down, blowing these crackers' brains up, led by their own cry. The Nkwaseapanyinfo will try to convince individuals, do not follow your own cry. Don't follow your own cry. Don't follow your own soul, your divine consciousness. Don't follow your own Nananom Mpanyinfo, your own spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. Don't follow the guidance of Nyamewa and Nyame, the great mother and great father. Follow the crackers. Follow us scared to death Negroes, slaves, stupid elders. Don't follow the divine that will guide you to cut down the enemy, execute the enemy on the spot. They will try to convince you not to follow your divine direction, but follow them. So we make these distinctions between the ignorant, stupid elder and the Nanapanyin. The Nanapanyin will only direct you to embrace fully your krawa, your soul, your divine consciousness, your ori inu, your selido, your chi, and so forth, your ka and kaet. You follow that, you follow divine order, and if you move into the ancestral realm as a result of being killed in the process, you've already engaged the Nananom Mpanyinfo on a regular basis. You're looking forward to going to the ancestral realm anyway. The white snarl spring can't penetrate that level of the ancestral realm anyway, so you will be living with your own ancestresses and ancestors. We did the broadcast, Nehem, pleasure in the spirit realm, implications for warfare, talking about the nature of pleasure in the spirit realm. And we experience pleasure in the spirit realm just as we experience pleasure in the physical realm. So this notion of fearing death is gone. We don't fear it, and in fact, we look forward to connecting with the ancestral realm and living in harmony and experience the kind of pleasure that we have always experienced here in the world on a higher level. So when you get that kind of information, you have no fear. And you look for the white offspring who are criminal murderers, and the people in the community who follow their cry will execute them on the spot, being led by Nyamewa, Nyame, Amenet, Amen. And when you're led by Amenet and Amen, no cracker can break that bond. There's no fear. You're unstoppable. So they want to keep us away from that. And they use their proxies within the community, the Nkwaseapanyinfo, the criminal, ignorant, stupid elder, to keep you away from that kind of thinking, that right, conscious, aligned thinking. So Shewo and She, they try to burn you and you do not burn, understanding the nature of your spirit as indestructible and immortal, transcarnationally. There's a difference between the way we embrace that reality and the Nkwaseapanyinfo will seek to move you away from that reality. That next piece, Ajo, the second symbol in this publication, Ajo, which means cool. It's also a title for the moon. If you look in ancient Kemet, for example, the title of the moon is Ya. In Coptic, Ya, I-A-H, Ya, or Y-A-H, or Y-A-H-U as well. Ya in Yao is also called Jo in Coptic, meaning the moon. And this is why in Akan culture, Jo Da, which is today, the day Da of Jo. Jo means cool, but that's a title, an honorific title of the moon. Of course, the sun, the Oriya, is hot. The Jo, the moon, is cool, nighttime and so forth. And nighttime is called Ara Jo. The day, Ada, of Jo, the cool part of the day, Ara Jo, or night. So Jo is the title of the an honorific title of the moon. It means cool and so forth. But then there's an Adinkra symbol, Ajo. And the Ebe, divine wisdom teaching, associated with that is when the king has good counselors, the reign will be peaceful. You have good counsel, the reign is peaceful, meaning balanced. Why is the reign peaceful or balanced? Because when you're cool and reflective, Jo, coolness, and you can attune and become introverted, attune through meditation, through susu hong, through ritual practice, align with your crown, your soul, your divine consciousness, attune to the forces in nature, go into the spirit realm and get that information, grasp that information, understand. Okay, so in the chat room, let us know. Send me a message right quick to let us know if you can hear us, because it dropped for a second. Anybody in the chat room, just send a message saying yes or no if you can hear us again. The call dropped for a second, and Blog Talk had a message. So everybody, all of the individuals on Blog Talk, all the stations, that they were having a problem with the audio. And we saw that message when we first logged in. So across the entire network, all of the broadcasters, they're saying they had a little problem with the audio. And they said they're working on it. So, all right, so you can hear again. All right. So we're talking about our Joe, coolness, continuity, the perpetuation of a sovereign nation, imbalance, and harmony. So this is what we're dealing with regard to counsel. What kind of counsel? Through coolness, what are you aligning with? You're aligning with your crowd of soul, divine consciousness. You're aligning with your abosom that govern your blood circle. You're aligning with your Nananom Mpanyinfo, whose role is to guide you in harmony with order. That's the kind of counsel that you seek. The Nkwaseapanyinfo, the stupid or foolish elders, the kind of counsel that they give is taking you away from anything that the whites and our offspring do not sanction. You're moving in a specific direction. You're dealing with Ancestorhood nation building. You're dealing with the 7 principal values of nation building, methods of food production and preservation, methods of curing disease, a military structure, defense structure, and so forth, institutionalizing our values, building training institutions and cultural institutions and ritual, spiritual institutions, and so forth, dealing with sound systems of governance and jurisprudence, the creation of and building of homes on acquired land and so forth, and also dealing with clothing and manufacturing clothing and textiles and so forth. These 7 principal values of Ancestorhood nation building for the perpetuity of the nation, the establishment, the reestablishment, restoration, and then perpetuation or perpetuity of the nation, continuity of the nation. These are the things that you're seeking counsel for. People who have experience, the Nananom Mpanyinfo, spiritually cultivated elders and elderesses. They will guide you in a harmonious fashion. Your Nananom Mpanyinfo will guide you in a harmonious fashion. Your own crowd will guide you in a harmonious fashion. The Abosom will guide you in a harmonious fashion. Nkwaseapanyinfo will seek, the stupid or foolish elder will seek to direct you. Well, no, you don't need to be focused on agriculture. You know, we already have that here, the whites and offspring, they already have provided that. We don't need to be focused on that. We need to just be focused on getting a good paying job with the whites and offspring. You don't need to be focused on curing disease from a natural perspective or embracing ancestral culture and learning about natural medicine. You need to deal with conventional medicine because the science and technology is advanced and they have these answers. What are you looking to your ancestral culture for? Why are you talking about a military structure? All you're going to do is get yourself killed. We need to try to live in harmony with this structure here. Why are you talking about building institutions, building your own school? Why are you homeschooling? Why are you infusing ancestral culture and the values of our culture into your children? Why are you doing that? You shouldn't be doing that. You should be following the university system here and the educational structure here, elementary school and high school and the foolishness they learn here. Why are you trying to infuse African culture? You hear these idiots talking that on a regular basis. Why are you trying to establish a different form of governance amongst our own people? Why are you reestablishing certain social structures, dealing with clan affiliation? You have some of these Nkwaseapanyinfo, foolish older people, even the ones who purport to practice ancestral religion, talking about there's no need to deal with the Nananom Mpanyinfo, the ancestresses and ancestors. All you need to do is go straight to the deities because they have all the power. That's nonsense. People who have no understanding of cosmology, corrupted by the white narrow spring, operating as Eurocentrism in blackface, thinking that they're dealing with some ancestral culture and they're dealing with white pseudo-metaphysics, the Kabbalah and Hermeticism, Gnosticism, Sufism, and all of that idiocy. So they're giving you misinformation, trying to take you away from your ancestresses and ancestors, which is the root of ancestral culture, because they've been corrupted by Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and all these other pseudo-esotericism. So, dealing with manufacturing home on acquired land. Why are you seeking to have your own land? Why are you seeking to build on your own territory separate from the white narrow spring, whether it's in this hemisphere or on the continent? Why are you trying to separate? You should be not trying to separate. You should be trying to gain equal footing in white society. This is what the stupid or foolish elder would say. Why are you trying to make your own clothing? Why don't you just try to invest in the companies and the manufacturing companies of the white narrow spring? So every aspect of nation building, nation restoration, the stupid or foolish elder will try to lead you away from, whether they are somebody totally engrossed in white culture or purporting to be involved in ancestral culture but corrupting the ideals, fashioning them to fit white culture in blackface, and claiming to be telling you something that's practical, pragmatic, and intelligent with regard to operating in the society, but in reality is based on their fear and impotence. Negroes will fall back on the term pragmatism. Oh, we're just being pragmatic. Oh, we have to be practical. We can't do these things. I've been living a long time. I see how these things work. You have Negroes who've been scared to death for a long time. You have Negroes who've been doing heroin for years. You have Negroes who've been smoking cigarettes and cigars and developing lung cancer for years. People have been worshiping a white cartoon character for years, for hundreds of years, over 1,000 years. So longevity doesn't equal maturity. You can be an idiot, you can be a stupid or foolish elder for decades. That's why we have titles for stupid, foolish elders, and they die as stupid or foolish elders. They can be 70, 80, 90 years old, still controlled by lust and vice and ignorance and idiocy. So when somebody starts falling back on pragmatism, practicality, which is really not, as a cloak for their fear and impotence in the face of the white narrow spring, you're looking at a Nkwaseapanyinfo, stupid or foolish elder. That includes those who try to rely on pseudo-ritual, pseudo-communications from fake deities, talking about what the deity said we shouldn't move in that direction. This is not going to work out for us. We need to figure out a way to integrate our activities with the white narrow spring. You're dealing with a stupid or foolish elder. Okay, let's go to the next piece. B inka B. Bite not one another. So the symbol is two fish biting the tails of one another and swimming around in a circle very quickly. And it's an admonition against biting or attacking one another. It's foolish when you see one fish biting the fin, the tail of one fish, and the other one biting the other one's tail, and they're just swimming in a circle. It's an act of futility. It's foolish. So biting one another or attacking one another is not wise without justification. So it's talking about the unwise or unjust attacking of one another. The two fish are from the same species, the same family. Why are they attacking one another? But it also points to justifiable attacks against our enemies. So be inka B, do not attack one another unjustifiably, but it also admonishes us to see this other fish that looks just like you, from the same family, from the same descent, is not your enemy, but there are other ones who are the enemy. So it's an admonition against attacking one another in the same community. We should focus that attack to the community on the outside. The stupid or foolish elder, once again, will seek to divert you from any notion, any thought, intention, or action of attacking our actual absolute enemies, the whites and their offspring. They come up with all kinds of machinations, intellectual, pseudo-spiritual, mental, and even physical, to keep you from moving in the direction and engaging sustained attack against the whites and their offspring, whether it's physical, whether it's with metal armament, whether it's chemical and biological, even whether it's spiritual. Anything you do to engage in an attack against the whites and their offspring, the stupid or foolish panyin, or Nkwaseapanyinfo, the stupid or foolish elder will seek to manufacture all kinds of ridiculous, pseudo-intellectual, pseudo-spiritual, and even physical obstacles to stop you from moving in a harmonious fashion. But the Nananom will tell you, be inkabi, do not unjustifiably attack each other. Focus that attack on our absolute enemies until we exterminate our absolute enemies on every level, physical, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, and so forth. Before we move forward, we see a couple of comments in the chat room, comment on the phone line, so we're going to take a phone call right quick. Michelle on the phone line, number 5306. You got a question or a comment?
Yeah, peace, Odwirafo. I was just commenting on the fact that you were saying that people couldn't hear anything in the chat room or see anything in the chat room. So I was just commenting on that. But everything else, you already know. You're right on tune.
Okay, I appreciate it. Appreciate the call. And that was the brother who actually, we were on the show Journey in Rhythm on Blog Talk Radio on Saturday. Brother Nefer Kwesi, so you can check that show out, Journey in Rhythm, on Saturday morning. So we appreciate that call. All right, we see there's some comments in the chat room. Just want to make sure didn't miss anything before we go forward. Okay, and the book is MASIE, the Ancestorhood of Nana Yao. That's the book that it's one of our publications that we're dealing with tonight in this context. We saw information in the chat room about that. Okay, so one question, where can we look for properly defined Adinkra symbols? Seems a lot have been watered down and become cliche, not really giving those deeper cultural meanings. Okay, so there's a couple of sources. On one hand, there's one book published by a brother, W. Bruce Willis, the Adinkra Dictionary, one of the more popular books. He has about 80 symbols there. Then Cloth as Metaphor by Kojo Arthur. You can order that online. Hundreds of Adinkra symbols in that book. He also includes some of the more recent corruption. Like you'll see, recently, Adinkra symbols go back thousands of years. If you look at the Tipanog script of the Tuareg people of North Africa, going back thousands of years, that Tipanog script, you'll find the Adinkra symbols there. You'll find Adinkra symbols in the so-called Ethiopic script, as well as in the Medusa and so forth. So thousands of years old, but some of these Negroes who become Christians start trying to incorporate some little Christian symbols into Adinkra symbols and so forth. So he has hundreds of symbols in the book, Cloth as Metaphor. A handful of them are some of the newer corruptions by the brainwashed Negro Ghanaians who inserted those. But yeah, hundreds of symbols. That's probably the most extensive publication dealing with the names of these various symbols and the proverbial wisdom. You see the proverbs in the language, in the tree language, as well as, their translation. And some background on symbols and background on Akan culture and things like that in the book as well. Good information there. Now, there are certain things with regard to the abosom, with regard to ancestral, religion, with regard to the Nsamanfo, with regard to the nature of the functioning of the abosom and how they're associated with these symbols. Those things you're not going to get from those basic texts. That comes directly from dealing with, these forces in nature and, seeing that information within the text. Of course, the Adinkra symbols and their names and so forth, they're directly connected with the names of certain abosom and their functions. And when you see the symbol and the proverb, even though the author may not understand that, but if you look at the name of the symbol, the structure of the symbol, what its function really is, and how it's associated with the name of a divinity and the same function of the divinity and so forth, and then we can also connect them to similar symbols in ancient Kemet, then we can pull it all together because, number one, it's laid out, even if you just study it in a cursory fashion, but actually dealing with the Nsamafo, dealing with the abosom, you experience, for example, when we talk about Shewo and She, they try to burn you and you do not burn. You look at that symbol, which is some billowing smoke and so forth, and it's connected, of course, with the sun. The sun never burns out. It doesn't, it's unburnable in that regard. It doesn't, burn into a, just smoke and disappear and never comes back. It's constantly burning, it's constantly fire. The nature of our spirit, the nature of our Ba and Ba'et, divine living energy that comes directly from Ra and Wright, the Creator and Creatress. When you look at the Ba bird in ancient Kemet, and they also show a bowl of burning incense. That divine living life force energy coming from the energy manifests through the Oriya, the sun, animated by Ra and Wright, all the suns and stars. All the stars are suns anyway, but our sun is a star. Ra and Wright, the Creator and Creatress, Nyokompon and Nyokompon created the stars, including our sun, and their energy animates and illuminates these fire balls, so to speak, black bodies that are illuminated through that fire energy, and they're glowing and so forth. So that same fire energy is moving through our system as our Ba, our Ba'et, our divine living energy, divine living spirit and so forth. So that fire never burns out. So when we deal directly with Ra and Riat and experience that fire as we link our Ba, our divine living energy, our life force energy with the great Ba and Ba'et, the Creator and Creatress, Ra and Riat, and of course, they are grandchildren of Inyamewa, Aminet, Amin, the Supreme Being. When we connect our Ba with the great Ba, our Ba'et with the great Ba'et, then we experience that unburnable fire within us and we understand that symbol. And we can expound upon that symbol because we're living that. Then we can see it manifest in our lives. So those deeper understandings comes directly from experience. Just like our people created those symbols being guided by Tuhuti and Sesha, male and female forces of divine wisdom, the divine scribes, showed us how to create those symbols and wrote those symbols down for us first, and we simply repeated that. So they guided us in that fashion and guided us to that understanding. The same is true of us here. We're guided to that understanding because we live these principles and we invoke these divinities. So, hold on one second. I want to make sure we didn't miss anything else. So let me know if that answers the question. Okay, so we just want to make sure we didn't miss anything in the chat room. So let's get back to the other four symbols. I want to go through those and showing the connection, the differences between, with regard to these symbols of representing ethical existence, Odwirafo, the difference between the approach of a Nanapanyin as in comparison to the Nkwaseapanyinfo, so you can know the difference. The next symbol, Memu, the two crocodiles who are joined at the stomach, the conjoined crocodile, often misnomer Siamese crocodiles in the, utilizing terminology of Siamese twins, but people conjoined at birth defect. The cells didn't totally separate. So sometimes you'll even have, of course, human beings who are identical twins. They're, of course, the identical twins come from the same cell, and once mitosis takes place, cell division takes place, they will normally separate, but then they didn't totally separate, so they could be joined at the stomach or joined at the head or joined in different areas and so forth. So you see these two conjoined conjoined crocodiles. And the Ebe, the proverb says, the two crocodiles share the same stomach, yet fight over food. So it shows the futility of these two individuals who are born of the same mother, came out of the same womb, so there's the same family that joined at the stomach. So whatever one eats is going to go into the same stomach. It's going to nourish the other one because they share the same stomach. If they eat something nourishing, they're going to nourish the other one. If they take in something poisonous, they're going to poison the one that's joined and connected with them. It's foolish for them to fight over food or fight over resources because as soon as one of them consumes something, they're joined at the stomach. So as long as one of them is eating, the other one is really, quote-unquote, eating. So those who are joined together in the same area, those who are connected, those of us who are connected, Afro-Akani people, we shouldn't be fighting over resources. We should be recognizing that whatever one takes in that's nourishing is going to nourish the other. We're talking about egalitarianism in that regard, communalism in that regard based on divine principles. But we also recognize that whatever we take in that's perverse is going to affect negatively those who are connected to us. Physically, if you smoke cigarettes and you live in a house and you're smoking cigarettes and you live in a house with other people in your family who don't smoke, you're still going to poison them through secondhand smoke, and people die from cancer, which came into being through secondhand smoke exposure. They've never been a smoker because they live with a smoker. They're forced to inhale smoke on a regular basis, and they develop lung cancer and die. There are thousands of our people who, in our community, who die every year from lung cancer and various smoking-related cancers, and they've never smoked a day in their lives. But they work around people, work in bars and other places where people are smoking. They also live with people who smoke, and that forces them to smoke, and therefore, because they're connected, they suffer. So whatever we place inside of our community, inside of our communal body that's nourishing, we nourish our people. Whatever we ingest that is perverse, we're perverting our people. Whatever you bring into your spirit, your sphere of awareness, your consciousness that is perverse, you're affecting those you are spiritually connected with. Trying to embrace dissexuality, homosexuality, and make it normal, that's perverse. Trying to embrace the whites in their offspring on any level whatsoever, it's trying to embrace spirits of disorder. So you're bringing disorder into your system. What happens when you pull disorder and toxins in your system? You disrupt your system. Just like someone taking in salt, white grain. They can say, well, these white grains are weak and individually they can't do anything to you. So you keep forcing these white grains into your system, then you develop high blood pressure and swollen ankles and everything else, a little weak white, because you keep accepting them in your system. Now you make your system suffer because of the ingestion of the white, the incorporation of the white. And whoever you are connected to, because you're incorporating the white into your system, you're polluting those who you're connected to as well. Some people will try to promote the false idea. Nkwaseapanyinfo, foolish elder, will promote the false idea that this symbol represents unity in diversity, meaning that we can all come together because we're all joined together at the stomach. It doesn't matter what race you are, what your sexual orientation, all this stupidity. This is about unity in diversity. This symbol is not about unity and diversity. These are two crocodiles from the same species, from the same mother. They're not diverse. They came out of the same womb. It's not a crocodile and a lion joined at the stomach. It's not a crocodile and a crocodile who's a pervert joined at the same stomach. It's two children of the same mother, of the same species, of the same race, who are joined together. So we're not dealing with unity and diversity. That's the kind of sleight of hand that Negroes will put forward, always seeking a way to ingratiate themselves with the whites and their offspring, the spirits of disorder, our absolute enemies, even through symbolism. So we bring a proper, clear understanding of what these symbols are. The next symbol in this set of 7, the 5th symbol, is Odentium, the singular crocodile. The singular Odentium. The crocodile lives in water, it breathes air, not water. So when you see a crocodile swimming through the water, you see very often the nose, the nostrils just above the water line, the eyes just above the water line, but the rest of the body is underwater. The crocodile lives in water. but breathe air, not water. So they may live in the water, but they're intelligent enough and instinctively they understand that, yes, they must take in oxygen and they must take in water, but they do so differently than the individuals who live in the same milieu, the same environment. They are surrounded by individuals and entities who do not look like them and do not function like them. They're surrounded by fish. Fish take in, of course, oxygen underwater through their gills. They need oxygen. The crocodile needs oxygen. But because the crocodile innately understands its ancestry, or the nature of its functioning, it will take in water or oxygen through the nostrils, through the air, by keeping its nose above water. Because the fish understand instinctively the nature of their ancestry, they will operate according to their nature, and they will take in oxygen by pulling it in through their gills underwater. If the crocodile sought to say, well, I'm living amongst and I'm a minority within a majority of individuals in this environment, I'll seek to imitate those in the larger environment since I'm surrounded by them. I'll imitate the culture or the way of life of those who are surrounding me, the dominant culture. And if the dominant culture breathes underwater, quote unquote, then I'm going to breathe underwater as well. So he rejects his ancestry, he rejects his culture, his natural way of being and functioning based on his design, and therefore he will seek to follow the culture of those surrounding him, seek to breathe underwater. And of course that will lead directly to asphyxiation and death, suffocation and death. Embracing a culture that is not yours will cause you to suffer suffocation and death. And then you will begin to function in a way that is self-destructive and not constructive. It won't lead you towards independence of action and sovereignty and the defense of that sovereignty in a sovereign independent territory. Will lead you to seek to constantly operate under the guise of being culturally, quote unquote, diverse, culturally open, culturally competent, but you're suffocating and dying where the dominant culture is still in control. You're not engaged in self-governance and self-rule on your own accord. You're following your enemy, and they're in absolute control, and you're suffering and suffocating, and sentencing your children and offspring and grandchildren to suffocate as well. So this is what we're dealing with. The Nkwaseapanyinfo will seek to reinterpret this and say, well, you need to just go with the flow. That's what a crocodile does. He goes with the flow. A crocodile recognizes who he is and goes against the dominant culture and maintains his cultural integrity. That's what the Nananom Mpanyinfo will show you what this symbol is talking about. So this is what we're dealing with. And of course, this represents our people in America. We live in a milieu, an environment where we're surrounded by a culture, a perverse culture of disorder that has nothing to do with us. If we submit to that and seek to breathe under that water, then we will suffer asphyxiation, suffocation, and death, which is what we have been suffering. The death, of course, is the reality that we're not engaged in self-governance and self-rule. If you're deceased and your body is just moved around and buried and controlled by individuals who are quote-unquote alive. But when you arise and awaken, resurrect, then you're in control of your own faculties. You have the opening of the mouth, the opening of the eyes, and now you can move your arms and legs and engage in your own activity as the text in ancient Kemet talk about. The opening of the mouth and eyes and so forth. So this is what we're dealing with. That sixth piece, the sixth Adinkra symbol dealing with this ethical existence, Obravo, Odwirafo Nyera Fiekwan, those in law or love never lose their way home. And this is what this symbol is dealing with. An expression of the value of commitment and properly structured relationships. So on a personal level, it refers to the relationships between the Aakhuamuman man and Aakhuamuman woman. Those men and women who are truly committed to one another through marriage and Aakhuamuman culture will never lose their way home, because home represents the primary institution wherein we build and maintain our relationship. A strong bond between Aakhuamuman man and Aakhuamuman woman is reflective of the understanding that we are in actuality two halves of a spiritual and physical whole. When we recognize the divine balance of male and female, only then are we able to actualize Obrabo, ethical existence. Now, we also go further. We talk about Afro-Akani people were created as part of an orderly universe. All other racial groups are a result of a rather recent genetic divergence from the original Afro-Akani group, which we came into being millions of years ago with the only created humans. We did an entire broadcast dealing with race and identity and so forth. So when we're talking about commitment, not only committing to individually Afro-Akani man, Afro-Akani woman, but Afro-Akani people being committed to our culture, being in law or in love. Law and love is the same word. In law or love with our culture, our way of life, committed to the function we are to execute in creation. The whites and offspring are spirits of disorder. They do not have a cry, a soul of divine consciousness. So they can't be committed to order because they are spirits of disorder. They only have a commitment to perpetuating disorder. Whether they're engaged in overt perpetuation of disorder through direct waging war against our people, or covert waging of disorder through the endearment process. We did a broadcast dealing with the whites and offspring seeking to endear us to them, engaging in quote-unquote nicety to endear us to them. So therefore, if you're on the plantation, for example, one of the whites and offspring brutalizes you, then the other one seeks to protect you from the brutalizer and tries to protect you and give you medicine and keep them from beating on you, and therefore you seek to embrace that white criminal, and you'll say, well, I'll work for them because they're being nice to me and they're trying to keep me alive and keep me from being brutalized. They're not trying to keep you from being brutalized so that you can free yourself from the plantation and kill them. They're trying to keep you from being brutalized so that you can continue to work for the next 40, 50 years and have children who will continue to work for the next 40 or 50 years. And if the other black people on the plantation want to rise up and have a plan to kill all of the whites, you'll be the first one to jump up and defend the white one who gave you some medicine and patted you on the head. So now, because they were nice, quote unquote, to you, and they were only nice so that they can perpetuate your slavery intergenerationally, you will jump up and go against the entire black population on the plantation in defense of the whites and their offspring. So that's that covert move towards endearment. The parasite needs a host. They will seek to latch on to us, to suck our blood out of us. The overt white criminal will attack you overtly, stab you in the chest. The covert white criminal will put their arm around you and stab you in the back, but either way, the knife is in the flesh. So the whites and offspring are committed to disorder. They are cancerous cells within the body of black humanity and seek to consume and destroy. We are to be committed to divine order, embracing order, embracing our people, and exterminating our enemies. This is what we're dealing with Odwirafo Nyera Piekwan. Love or law never gets lost on the way home. And of course, the whites and their offspring and their proxies within the community, the stupid or foolish elder, whether they're secular, Nkwaseapanyinfo, or pseudo-spiritual, claiming to be involved in ancestral religion, Nkwaseya, stupid or foolish elder, Panyi, they will seek to reinterpret such a teaching, an ancestral wisdom teaching, that has the backing and the experience of thousands of generations, over a million generations of earthly experience. They will seek to reinterpret that as embracing dissexuality, embracing interracial coupling and all of that idiocy. But of course, we expose that foolishness and expose the Nkwaseapanyinfo in the process. The final symbol that we deal with in this particular publication is the Sankofa symbol. If you forget and you return and embrace your ancestral past, to understand it is not taboo, it is not hated. Sewo Werisi Nawo Sankofa Yen Chi, which is that Ebe, that proverb. You see the bird, the Sankofa bird, turn back, reaching back, and also grabbing an egg in its mouth at the same time. Reaching back, looking back to see what took place in the past. So as they move through and advance through the life cycle, then they will understand what has taken place in the past, so they won't make the same mistakes in the present or in the future. Understanding what took place in the past to find out what are the remedies that we have already unearthed, and the processes and the protocols that were put in place so that we can access remedies and create things, innovate things that have never been created before to solve problems that have never presented themselves in the fashion that they presented themselves in the present. How to overcome those things, how to get remedies to overcome these things. We have protocols in place to arrive at newly created, newly innovated answers to these problems. As long as we embrace these ancestral protocols, we can not only solve problems from the past, but also be innovative and address these issues in the present and in the future because we align with these ancestral protocols. Looking back to the past to see that reservoir of information, that reservoir of experience, 1 million generations of earthly experience, we've mastered life. We connect with the Nananom Mpanyinfo because they mastered life. We connect with the Nananom Mpanyinfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, because they mastered life and they demonstrated that, and they continue to demonstrate that as a crystallization of divine order operating through the human sphere, the human sphere. So when you look at that manifestation of order within the human sphere, and you look at Sankofa, return, go and grasp from the past, from the elders and elderesses, ones who have already transitioned, as well as those who are living right now, and you look at their life experience, and you draw from their life experience on how they have mastered life, and you can use the same protocols to master life at this time. Of course, the Nkwaseapanyinfo will try to teach you, don't look back to the past, forget about the past, let's look into the present. Let's not look into what happened in the past and slavery and so forth. Let's only focus on what's happening right now, because slavery is over. These are Negro. We talked about the ramifications of reincarnation in a previous broadcast. When you're looking at the whites and their offspring today, anytime you see anybody, they are a returned spirit. They lived in the past and they've returned through their blood circle. We have lived in the past, we have returned through our blood circle. You see a supervisor at work, one of the whites and their offspring, this is the same white individual who in a previous lifetime was torturing people on plantations. It's the exact same individual who has returned and is born. So when he stands up and says, well, maybe my ancestors tortured people on plantations, but that was 200 years ago. I didn't have anything to do with that, so you shouldn't have any negative feeling towards me. Actually, you are the exact same person who was torturing us on the plantation, and now we have the opportunity to finally even the score physically, because we have returned as well. The Nkwaseapanyinfo don't want you to focus on the ramifications of reincarnation, because that changes your entire view. Every time you see one of the whites in their offspring, whether it's a baby in a carriage or an older cracker, you're seeing the return of one of the whites in their offspring, the return of those Greeks who invaded ancient Kemet, the Romans who invaded ancient Kemet, the white Arabs who invaded ancient Kemet, these white Vandals and everybody else, the same crackers, the same enslavers, the same white Hindus who invaded ancient black. These are the same perverse spirits. The same ones who promoted dissexuality thousands of years ago are the exact same crackers today, promoting dissexuality today. They have been doing this for thousands of years. So when you know what you're looking at, because you really understand the ramifications of Sankofa in real time, you can make proper decisions, proper identification, and move forward in a full, strong position, an informed position, and a strong, informed understanding, recognizing what's real, understanding what you need to do, what you need to stay away from, what you need to move toward, what kind of armaments you need, physical, biological, chemical, ritual, what kinds of things will work, what kinds of things won't, who you need to connect with, who is not strong enough right now to deal with anything with regard to confrontation. Sankofa allows you to make those assessments and so forth. So that's that last piece. So we wanted to show the connection between these principles of ethical existence, how they are manifest through the Nananom Mpanyinfo, how they can be corrupted if you're not paying attention by the Nkwaseapanyinfo, the stupid or foolish elder, and so forth. And the last piece we want to show, if you look at the Nanasom page on our website, and we'll put the link for that back in the chat room. The Nanasom page, click on that link. When you scroll down towards near the middle of the page, we show the Ahinasa, which is a triangle, and you'll see the Okrawa at the apex of the triangle, which is like in the head position. The bottom right-hand corner is the Abosom, the forces in nature. The bottom left-hand corner of the Ahinasa of the triangle is the Nananom Mpanyinfo. When you look at that triangular structure, of course, you have the Obra, the divine living energy, in the center, permeating the entire structure. You'll see the Abosom, the forces in nature, and the Nananom Mpanyinfo. They are supporting what's in the apex. They support what's in the crop. The Abosom, the forces in nature, support what is encoded within your crop, because what's encoded within your crop was encoded there by the Supreme Being, the divine function. The Nananom Mpanyinfo, so the Abosom empower you to execute your function, and the Nananom Mpanyinfo support your crop within your crop by giving you the guidance on how to utilize that power in a harmonious fashion based on your specific ancestral clan. So you look at that Ahinasa, that's the structure dealing with your functioning in creation. But if you look at that same Ahinasa socially, at the apex where the Okrawa is the individual, which is you. The bottom right-hand corner where the Abosom are the representatives of the Abosom in the society. The Akamfo, Abosomfo, the spiritualists, the priests, the priestesses who are actually born to be that, who are actually in harmony with order, who are actually living up to that divine function. And then in the bottom left-hand corner, the representative of the Nananom Mpanyinfo in society are the Nananom Mpanyinfo, the spiritually cultivated elders and elderesses. So you have that same structure. Just like the Abosom and Mpanyinfo support the craft, the Akamfo and Abosomfo, and the Nananom Mpanyinfo, they support the individual who is at the apex. So that same Ahinasa structure you'll find in society, you'll find it as well in the individual. And then we also show further down the similar structure at the apex is Ancestorhood, which is nation building. The bottom right-hand corner is Nanasom, ancestral religion, dealing with the invocation of the divinities that support Ancestorhood, nation building. The bottom left-hand corner is Amamre, ancestral culture, manifests the Nananom Mpanyinfo, manifests the Nananom Mpanyinfo that support Ancestorhood, nation building. So Nanasom and Amamre, ancestral religion and ancestral culture, support the apex Ancestorhood, nation building restoration. So that is the Ahinasa, or triangle of liberation. So, all right, so we there's one question in the chat room. What is your take on the Farrakhan interview on the Breakfast Club show? And I did actually see that interview. Of course, Farrakhan promotes the culture of the whites in their offspring. Fard Muhammad, white homosexual era, they talk about him, talking about he's God in the flesh and all this nonsense. He's sitting up on a spaceship right now, waiting for some reason to destroy the white man. He couldn't move forward and destroy the white man because he had to give a specific amount of time before the white man's rule is over for 6,000 years. He had to go through all these machinations. He's the Lord of the worlds, but he can't move forward and destroy the white man until a certain time period passes. He's restrained by a prophet. All this stupidity is what they promote. Now, they have rhetoric, and they know what kind of rhetoric to speak to the public. And then when people get involved in the organization, they're taking them into Dianetics and all this other nonsense with L. Ron Hubbard, all kinds of foolishness. 20 years ago, they were talking about, hey, this is it. Nation time, nation building. this is what we're doing and nobody else is doing what we're doing. We have a 1 million man march and 2 million people show up and everything else 20 years later it's as if it never happened. Things are in worse condition now than they were back then. Worshiping a fictional white deity, calling him black and saying that he's the Lord of the world is not going to save our people. Embracing Islam is not going to save our people. Embracing any interpretation of the Bible is not going to save our people. Talking that nonsense, talking that rhetoric, getting riled up and all that, that's all entertainment. That's all theater. That doctrine was born of the white offspring. It will never save anything or anyone. It's not designed to do so. They teach black self-hatred. They teach that our noses swole up and our mouths swole up, lips swole up, and our hair twisted up because we were in disobedience to God. And that's why we went into Africa and we became, have Afro-Akani features. And just before we go forward, there's 90 seconds left in the broadcast, so if you want to continue to listen online, on the phone line, past 11 o'clock, you have to call in 657-383-0635, 657-383-0635. You have about a minute to call in, because after 11 o'clock, if you're just online, you won't be able to hear beyond 11 o'clock. So you got a minute to call in, 657-383-0635. So those doctrines, whether it's Moorishism, the Nation of Islam, Hebrewism, pseudo-esotericism, you'll find that these organizations were forming around the end of the so-called, late 1800s, early 1900s in America, in the black community in America, because the whites and offspring send their proxies into the community to promote these doctrines. Why did they send people into our community to promote different forms of Islam, Christianity, Hebrewism, Moorishism, all this nonsense? Because they saw that it was our people who embraced ancestral religion, Vodou and Hutu and everything else, who waged war against the whites and offspring and killed them and established independent nations. We were going to the continent, trying to establish independence there as well. They saw the capacity and the possibility of this nation crumbling if all of our people decided, you know what, we're going to reject the whites and offspring and we're going to kill them or we're going to die in the process. That would be the end of America. So if they can get us to be docile and embrace silly little prophecies, that we shouldn't move forward, we shouldn't seek to eradicate our enemies, eliminate our enemies. So we need to start reading the Bible and incorporating this nonsense and taking on Muslim names and all this other foolishness. What has happened in the past 80 years since the Nation of Islam has been around? Absolutely nothing. We're in the worst condition now than we've been in 80 years. We're no closer to independence, self-rule, self-governance on our own independent territory. We're no closer to that today than we were 100 years ago. So, of course, that impotent pseudo-philosophy is not going to work. So all the posturing and all of the, theatrics, it doesn't mean anything. Talking a little tough here and there, then turning around, talking about I got our God backing me up, all of that nonsense is ridiculous. It does nothing. Talking about every time it rains or every time there's a hurricane, that's Master Muhammad sending the hurricane to punish America. That's idiotic. They've been talking that nonsense for decades. Farrakhan's been talking that nonsense for the past 20-plus years. Every time it rains, all of a sudden that's Master Muhammad sending a hurricane to punish the white man. He's saying that in 95, 20 years later saying the same thing. It doesn't seem like the whites and offspring have been punished at all. They've been moving straight forward in lockstep with their plan without any obstacle whatsoever. So we need to wake up from these idiotic philosophies, even though people have a little charisma in their speech, a little flair and all that nonsense. We're dealing with real culture, real ancestral religion. The only people who are actually affected what these Negroes are actually talking about, have been talking about for 80 years, the only people who are actually affected freedom and independence are the people who practice ancestral religion. And they affected that freedom and independence during slavery and freed themselves during the enslavement process and defended their independent nation while slavery was still going on. The Muslims weren't doing that. so-called Muslims and anybody else. So this is what we're dealing with. So, so let me just scroll up. So another question up here. Do you have any suggestions for how to realign when we have parents who are Nkwaseapanyinfo without causing disorder? Well, you just do what you need to do. You follow your culture. Follow what you live in harmony with order. It's very similar to dealing with individuals who are addicted to drugs or addicted to cigarettes. Of course, nicotine is a drug, addicted to alcohol and so forth. First and foremost, number one, if you used to smoke cigarettes or marijuana or drink alcohol and everything else, and you decided you're no longer going to do that and pervert your body, you made that decision, you're not going to do that ever again. So you let them know, I'm not smoking anymore. I'm not drinking anymore. I'm purifying my body, and this is why I'm doing it. If they don't want to get on board with that, then they're not going to get on board with it right now, but you continue, you never compromise ever on what you're doing. Same is true when you leave the fake religion, or if you were to change your diet and you want to no longer be obese and you can control your weight and get back in harmony with order. They may continue to eat in a certain fashion and continue to have all kinds of health problems and high blood pressure and diabetes and can't walk up the steps and everything else, but you change your diet and you're not going back to that nonsense. If they want to know why you change your diet, you give them the information. You don't have to argue with them, just give them the information. This is what we're doing. This is what's happening. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is the benefits of it, and they can see that. The same thing with ancestral religion and culture. You move forward in a harmonious fashion. When you have that and you're moving in that direction, the reality is that over time, moving in that fashion, moving in that direction, and living in harmony with order, you're generating the kind of energy and the kind of feel where there's substance to what you're doing. There's weight. Just like the sun, the Oriya has substance, it has weight. And because it has substance or weight, it begins to pull the other planets into its orbit, into its field, because it has the substance and the weight. And when you're engaged in harmonious practice, you're grounded in divine order, then you have substance or weight. And you begin to attract and draw other individuals who are flailing in their perverted culture, the white culture. They want to see, well, what are you doing? Some of them are conditioned and they don't want to admit that what you're doing is harmonious and what they're doing is self-destructive. But whether you say it or mention it or you just operate and live that way, they're going to have to make that comparison just by virtue of the fact that you exist. And they're comparing the way you're operating, the way they're operating. And some of them will drop some of that ego nonsense and seek incrementally, little by little, and some will just jump out and try to find out. They want to figure out a way to begin to incorporate the things that you're incorporating. At the same time, the children and grandchildren will be attracted to what you're doing because their Nsamanfo are always pushing them towards divine order. Their Okra is always pushing them towards divine order. When you engage in divine order, the cry of the individuals who are engaged in perversity is also pushing them towards divine order. Now there's a great dilemma. There's a conflict because their cry is pulling them towards you and they're pulling in the other direction. So that creates, tension within them. And it increases the more you live in harmony with order, the more the tension within them increases, which is good. Because their Nsamanfo are pressuring them, their Abosom are pressuring them, their Okra is pressuring them, and you keep moving in that direction, they'll get tired of being pressured, and at some point they'll have to break and start trying to change their lifestyle. Okay, so you don't have to waste time engaging in debates. We did. You can check out our broadcast, Cartoon Scholars, Animaniacs, and Animania. We talk about Akasa, Ye, Mofratsem, useless debate, or debates are for children. We don't need to waste time debating individuals. People who are sincere, if they really want to know something, if you give them information, they'll take it. If they're not sincere and ask for information, it doesn't matter what you give them. They're going to argue it down anyway because they're really not sincere. So if people are really sincere, then you give them information and they'll take it. If they're not sincere, you give them information, they'll take it, pretend like they're trying to look at it, but they really have an agenda, and they're not entertaining it, no matter, even though it's true, they're not really trying to entertain it. So why would you debate? The people who are sincere, you don't need to debate them because they just want real information. So anything you give them, they're going to investigate. If you debate an insincere person, yes, you could crush them in a debate, but they're not sincere anyway. They're not really arguing to find out truth. They're just arguing just to argue, just to promote their point, even though they know it's inaccurate because they're emotionally unstable. So why debate an emotionally unstable individual who are spiritually discordant? So either way, don't waste time with the debates. Just give them information if they ask for it and continue to live in a harmonious fashion. We begin to draw individuals who really want to align in that same fashion. All right. So that broadcast is based on that publication, that article we published, and we go into detail about that. So you can check that out. All right, so I'm just scrolling through to make sure we didn't miss anything else. Saw some comments, a little conversation. Just want to make sure there wasn't any questions. One is sometimes when I go to my ancestral shrine posing a concern, and Adinkra symbol is brought to my awareness, assisting me with the concern. So yeah, that's one of those things we were talking about where these are not just, like Target or Nike or something, just symbols, and they just attach some little arbitrary meaning. These symbols come from Tehuti and Sesha, Bre Chirihunuate and Abrewaze called in Akan tradition. Forces in nature that scribe, the divine scribe, male and female force of divine wisdom. When they scribe and carve symbols, they're defining aspects of reality. The specific geometric pattern carries the energy that manifests that aspect of reality. So that specific geometric pattern, the radiation of the energy emanating from that pattern is different than a different pattern. In the same fashion as we talked about before, if you blow air through a trumpet, you get a certain kind of sound. You blow air through a tuba, you get a different kind of sound. Same air, but because the form is different, the air and the sound vibrations that emanate are different based on the form. So you have life force energy moving through a certain geometric form. Based on the form, the energy is moving in that fashion, and it radiates and resonates. If there's a different form, the same life force energy moving through that form, a different configuration of vibrations emanate from that form. And that informs us and affects us and informs us in a certain fashion. When Tehuti and Sesha scribe specific geometric forms in nature, and then we replicate those inscriptions, and they become Medutu, they become Adinkra symbols, they become Vebes and everything else. Their forms that they've inscribed, they know the specific form that generates specific energy configurations that inform us and affect us in a harmonious fashion. They're invocatory. These forms, these geometric patterns are invocatory. They can draw the energy of our bosom, draw the energy of the Nananom Mpanyinfo. So they will utilize those symbols to communicate directly with us. Communicate teachings and sayings and everything, but specifically energy patterns that affect our spirit organs, our spirit bodies in a measurable, quantifiable fashion to realign us. They are healing. So that's just evidence of that. And it's also evidence, once again, of who we are transcarnationally. You didn't have to go and, spend thousands of dollars to study under somebody so they can tell you that these Adinkra symbols operate in that fashion. You dealt directly with the Nsamanfo, and they show you directly how these Adinkra symbols are used. So you know from direct experience. You're not dependent on somebody else convincing you of that. All right. Okay, so I'm just going through once again the chat room, making sure we didn't miss anything else. So a couple of people missed that. Yeah, so for people, let people know that they have to call in before 11 o'clock. So sometimes the chat room is still working, but if you're just online, so you can still interact in the chat room to a certain extent, but if you're online and you don't call in by 11 o'clock, then you won't be able to hear anymore. Only the people on the phone line will be able to hear. So in the chat room, you can still interact in the chat room, but you won't be able to hear. So you got to catch it before 11 o'clock. Somebody posted that in the chat room. Okay, so there's one more call on the phone line before we wrap up. Chio on the phone line, number 8913. You got a question or a comment?
Here to Brother Kwesi. My name is Alonzo Swanson. I had a quick question for you. My father transitioned on Friday. He was a Christian, real heavy into the church, like what have you. Now, the question I have is, I feel uneasy concerning pouring libation to him, and I just wanted to see if I can get your insight on this, brother. During his lifetime, all he did was basically give confusion between, my brothers and sisters and myself. And it was funny when I seen the show you were doing, dealing with honorable ancestors and foolish ancestors. And would you say, or what is your opinion on that matter, as far as even approaching him with the ancestral shrine, with pouring libations, what have you? That's
okay,
my question.
So now when you said he was heavily involved, so he really believed in the whole Christian thing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is what we would typically do. Now, you would have a shrine, for your spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. You would have that anyway.
Right.
And those are the ones that you typically evoke. Now, when someone like mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, and so forth makes their transition, you can, for a certain number of days, you could put their picture on that shrine if you would like. That's a magnet for them. You don't have to put a picture there, but you can do that. You can include them in libation, or when you're pouring libation, to sit with your Nkwasepanyinfo like you normally do. You can also evoke them by name. Because what happened, he was involved in that when he was alive. But as soon as he made his transition, he realized instantaneously that everything that he believed was totally false. Because he knows right now that there's no Jesus over there.
Right.
He's communicating with your other family members. So on one hand, for us, it's a loss. But for them, he's welcome. He's a new arrival. So, they're happy on that side, but we're, quote unquote sad on this side. It's like when a child, a spirit is sent into the womb, they're leaving the ancestral community. So they're letting them go. It's a farewell, so to speak. But then we're receiving this child, and the child's born and everything, and, they're coming to the world. So it's new for us, but, they're saying farewell to the ancestral community for a while. So,
right.
In the same fashion, the people who went before him, some of his maybe grandmothers, grandfathers, and so forth that he hasn't seen, directly in a long time, he's reconnecting with them. So that's a family reunion.
Oh, yeah. He was the last of all his brothers and sisters, right?
You said what now?
I'm sorry. I said he was the last of his immediate family, like brothers and sisters. Mother one he was the last one.
Oh, okay. So he's connecting with all of them now. So on one hand, he'll, have some anxiety. Everybody has anxiety when they separate from their earthly family, and seeing everybody going through the process and going through setting the funeral up, and people are upset and everything, and they can feel and empathize with that, and that separation, they feel that separation as well. But at the same time, they're being, embraced and consoled by those who went before them. But he also recognizes that Jesus isn't over there because Jesus don't exist. And all them other characters, Abraham and all these other ones, he recognizes instantaneously that they don't exist. So that's an adjustment as well. Some people take that well. Some people, realize that they've spent their entire lives misinforming themselves and other people, and they'll be a little anxious and depressed about that. You have a spirit that shows up in people's dreams that are kind of upset and depressed and longing for, some kind of, solace from the earthly family. So it kind of depends. But what you can do is, of course, you're still evoking your Nsamanfo, and he'll see now what you've been doing because you're doing that. And he'll see, well, he's been connecting with you all this whole time. And from you on this side and them on that side, both working to, help to bring balance, it'll be, better for him. So you can include a picture of him. Like sometimes people place a picture of the individual who made their transition for the next 7 days. They'll put a picture by a candle on the shrine for that individual just to let them know that they're acknowledging them. In our Akan tradition, people have little sculptures where they give food, traditionally give food, sculptures specifically for the deceased individual, and give food, some offering, just to let them know that they're, on one hand, acknowledging that they're a spirit in the spirit realm and they're still communicating with them. At the same time, after a certain period, in our Akan culture, about 40 days that they spend connecting with the family to a certain extent, then they start making that journey to the ancestral realm to become firmly seated, as opposed to still hanging around the family here and trying to console people. Their spirit goes on, and visiting people in dreams a lot, their spirit begins to go on and become firmly seated in the ancestral realm with the other ancestral families so they can spend most of their time there. And they'll visit us periodically through dreams and through ritual and stuff like that, but they spend most of their time amongst the other Nsamanfo. So if you want to, you could put a picture there, or you put out, a little offering, a food offering, a portion of food and so forth. And once you do that, you still sit down. Once you pour libation to your regular Nsamanfo, put that food out or put that picture out, whichever one you want to do, what you're drawn to do. Once you do that, that's the call, that's the evocation. But then you sit down and communicate with your Nananom Mpanyinfo, your ancestral family, and now he's part of that. And he'll either come during that session at the shrine or through a dream or through other ways that he'll communicate certain things or push you into a position where you see a picture or come in contact with something of his or something like that to give you that kind of acknowledgement to let you know, or even through an animal totem to let you know that he recognizes what you're doing.
No, appreciate it, Brother Kwesi.
Okay, Medasa. Appreciate the call. Okay. All right. Okay, there was one more question. Question the pastor, them that putting their hands on people and making the demon contact, or making demon contact to individual, and he called Jesus to come out the person's body. What is that? So when they're talking about laying hands on individuals and calling on Jesus to make the spirits come out the body, so there are a couple of things that are happening. Number one, sometimes people are just, playing games, faking, trying to make people believe that they have some little extra power or whatever. Then you have other individuals. Sometimes there's a discarnate spirit, whether it's an ancestral spirit or there's a discarnate spirit that's just, plaguing somebody, causing them some problems. Typically what happens is when you simply acknowledge the fact that spirit is there and you say things or put forward energy saying, get away from this person, no different than if a homeless person is harassing somebody and you walk up on them and say, get the hell away from them. They see that you're serious, they back off. Same thing with the discarnate spirit, which is like a homeless-like spirit. If they see that you're projecting the kind of energy, electromagnetic energy, repulsive type energy towards them, that's not comfortable for them. You're not cowering and scared and, weak and pulling back away from them. You're projecting some firepower, like get away from them. No matter what you say in English, the energy that you have, the anger that you have, that you want to repel them, try to get them off of somebody, that's enough to repel them. Number one. Number two, the reason why it's enough to repel them is because if they're harassing somebody and the people come together and say, no matter what you do, we're not going to obey you, number one. And number two, we're not going to give you anything. We're not going to sacrifice an animal. We're not going to give you an offering. We're not going to do nothing for you. So nothing you do is going to make us help you in your situation, because all those spirits want is some kind of energy projection, some kind of sacrifice, some kind of energy thrown their way. And if they don't get that, then it's nothing they can do. They're just wasting time because it's not going to happen. So once they know that you're serious, you're not going to give them anything, then they typically pull back. It has nothing to do with people saying, quote unquote, the name of Jesus and all the other foolishness. So you could sit around and say that all day long, and it's not going to do anything. Now you have some other spirits who they just want to harass people. They're just hanging around. They don't want anything. They just want to try to harass people if they can. And if people are scared and fearful and don't generate their own repulsive power, then that spirit will hang out until the person wakes up and gets angry and repels them. So you have situations like that. For example, you see a documentary, they were talking about the quote-unquote demons in Ghana and all this other nonsense. And they have these pastors laying hands on the people, and the people in Africa are falling out and shaking and talking about, well, the spirit is in them, the demon is in them, the devil is in them, and we're going to lay hands on them in the name of Jesus. And they got the Bible, and they're calling on Jesus and putting their hands on the head, and the person is shaking and shaking. And some of them, you know, the spirit leaves because they're like, well, I'm tired of playing with these fools. I'll just go ahead and leave. I'm tired of clowning them. But then some of them say, you know what, I'm not going to leave. I'll just clown them, and they just keep making the person shake. And then the pastor is saying, well, this spirit is a little bit more difficult. So they have another section in part of the village where they had chains, where they would tie the person to a post who was being possessed, and they'll go and spend hours and hours chanting the name of Jesus to the person and putting their hands over their head and using the Bible. If the name of the fake character Jesus worked, saying at one time would force the spirit to leave. So spending hours and hours and hours saying Jesus, 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 and get out, Satan, get out, and all this other nonsense, that spirit is sitting there just like you and I would be sitting there like, look at these dumbass Negroes talking about Jesus. That spirit is just hanging out laughing at them. And when it gets tired of playing with them, then they'll leave and they come back later. Just like somebody, a little kid, you know, throwing rocks at somebody's car or something. When they get tired of doing it, they leave and they come back later and do the same thing. So, of course, the name of Jesus is not doing anything, or the name of Muhammad or any other of these fictional cartoon characters. So you have some spirits who are just hanging out, and they're kind of weak themselves, and they're just seeking they're like a crackhead seeking some kind of energy rush, and if you don't give it to them, and you basically say, get out of here, most of them will leave. And you have some, just like other kinds of homeless people, you tell them to get out of here, and they hang around anyway, and they try to challenge you a little bit. But if you generate if you use your physical force to beat them down, because they're trying to attack you, then you beat them down, and that's it. Same thing with your energetic force. If you project some extra fire towards them, that's repulsive to them, and they feel that extra fire, and they're forced to get out. And then sometimes, if they're extra with it, you invoke the Albosom or evoke the Nananom, and that will remove them as well. So that's what's taking place with that. And then somebody asked about Umar Johnson. So at this point, all we can see, he's raising money for a school. If what he's talking about is what's going to happen with the school, some people would benefit from the school. He's not fully grounded in ancestral culture and religion. He's learning about some things. You see that he's started incorporating some Yoruba stuff and things he's talking about. And you can see the difference between what he's saying about that and what he was saying a couple of years ago when he had absolutely no clue about ancestral religion at all and was giving, interviews and talking about African spirituality and had no clue what he was talking about. Then he started learning some stuff about the Yoruba traditions. He started incorporating some of those things. Still not fully grounded in that yet. You can tell just by the things that he says. But he's trying to open up a school. So, people need to, if there's a difference between having a school open and then them going to the school of one of the whites and their offspring, then if you have that choice, then going to a black school is going to be better than going to a school opened by the whites and their offspring. But no matter what it is, no matter who it is, before you invest in anything, you always investigate to see what it's going to be. If it's something that you feel drawn to support, then you support it. If you don't feel drawn to support it, then you don't support it. If you're interested in, supporting schools, there are, Uhuru Academy is out there in Texas. You have Kamali Academy in Louisiana. We had Dr. Samora Kamara on. a few weeks ago. Of course, in Njideka, Cardamo, with Fawahudi Suya, we had her on the show. She's part of the Akon Economic Development List. Mama Mawuti Ashakir, they have the Akoko 9 homeschooling network resources, and they've been doing homeschooling for years as well. So there are a number of schools that are out there, plus, some of the schools in the Council for Independent Black Institutions, schools all across the country that's been around for, like Ujamaa, it's been around for over 40 years in D.C. So you have a number of different schools out here that if your focus was, I want to support an independent Afro-Centered institution, school, whether it's K through 12 or whatever. Many of these schools are K through 12. You have people doing homeschooling. They have independent private schools. Some people have charter schools, a number of different ones. So if that's your focus, of like you want to focus the educational, independent Afro-Centered educational movement, there are many of them out there. So check them out. So it's up to you to decide. You have to investigate to see what you want. If you see where you're going, see what kind of institution you want. If you just want to support any school, then there are many out there, including his. If your focus is specifically a school dealing with ancestral religion for real, then you have to investigate and see who's who. Of course, Akoben Institute, we had Inaya Baruti and Mwalimu Baruti on last week. Of course, they had their third annual fundraiser for the Akoben Institute, which is a homeschooling institution, but they deal with middle schoolers and high schoolers, and they're educating on a high level there. So you can definitely support that institution because they're dealing, they're straight dealing with real work and so forth. So it's all about investigation. You have to see what you want to deal with, see what, the details about these institutions and what, people are raising money for. And if you like what you see, then you support it. So let's see if there's anything in the chat room we missed. Okay, I think we got all of the questions answered. Okay. So yeah, it's all about investigation to see where individuals are at. I've only cursory seen some of the information with his school and so forth, seen a couple of things that he's done. So some information he has, some information he's gathering, some information he was talking about, for example, with regard to AIDS and stuff like that was inaccurate in the past. I think he's caught up with some of the information now. In the past, he was talking about, hate is an emotion, and we don't deal with that, so he still doesn't understand divine hate and so forth, which, the majority of our people who are engaged in Pan-Africanism, ancestral culture, religion, and so forth, they haven't gotten that proper analysis yet because they were embracing it based on the misinformed models that have been put forward in front of our people for the past few decades. So we're bringing accurate information, and the more it gets out, the more disseminated, more people will begin to investigate divine law, divine hate, recognizing these as two poles of divine order, and they will begin to incorporate that in what they're teaching. But, right now, some of our people don't have that information yet. So study what people are talking about and see where they're at and see where they're going and see if they're embracing real information and what their program is. And that's just across the board, whether it's his thing or anybody else talking about anything. You always investigate, see what's going on. Same thing for our information, our publication. You investigate that information. We make it a little bit easier because all 16 of our books, the ebook version, you can investigate them because they're all free downloads, so you can check them out ahead of time. And then if you like what you see, then you can make a purchase if you want to as far as the softcover versions, but you can always access the ebook versions for free. And then we have our broadcast, this is the 143rd episode of our Blog Talk Radio broadcast. We started last May 27th, so we just had the 1-year anniversary last week. So you can download all, including this one, the 143 broadcasts. And you can, of course, they're free downloads. You can get that information as well. So always investigate any information in detail before making a decision. Okay, so we're going to end here. We'll be back on tomorrow for Ojira. Yerase, we thank you for tuning into the show. If you'd like to support the work that we are doing, of course, you can purchase the soft cover versions of our publications. We also have our Akongwasua Dine, Healing, Education, Learning, Training, Employment, and Entrepreneurship. We're working to establish a physical space for that in the D.C., Maryland area. So you can check that out on our website as well. We have a GoFundMe page for that, but any purchase of our book goes towards that goal as well. So, Yerase, again, we thank you for tuning in, and Yebeshiabio, we will meet again. That's up.